Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. I am your host, Samuel, and today we have with us another fascinating guest. He goes by the name of Dr. Kent Picklesimer. Now, some of you might know him as a practicing physician. Some of you might know him as a sales rep for a medical device company. He's one of the few individuals that has experienced both sides. Now, if you're someone that wants to get into the industry, this is an episode you want to hear. If you're already in the industry, you definitely want to hear this episode. And if you're leading the way, this is something, again, that you want to listen to. And for those providers out there that have tuned in, you definitely want to peek up your ears because, again, Dr. Kent Picklesimer has led quite the interesting life with quite the interesting tale. But I am not going to spoil any of it. I'm going to save it all for the interview. This is going to be part one. And as always, thank you for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast. And I really do hope you enjoy this interview. Hey, Kent, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great, Samuel.
All right, today we have with us Kent, who has a special story to tell. But you know what, Kent, I'm going to let you do the honors. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Samuel. So my name is Kent Picklesimer. I am contacting you today from Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been in Charlotte about 10 years, and currently I work as a territory sales manager for a lower extremity surgical instrumentation company. I've been with the company about 3 years and continuing to grow in the area.
Excellent. So the thing about Kent and what some of you might not know is that Kent he's been on both sides of the industry. He was actually a physician before he became a sales rep. And I know that's a surprise to a lot of people. So Kent, talk to us a little bit about that, what you were doing before you became a sales rep.
Yeah, so I actually practiced for about 16 years as a podiatrist. I went to the Ohio College of Podiatric Medicine, where I received a doctor of podiatric medicine, and subsequently did a 3-year surgical residency at Fairfax Hospital in Northern Virginia, followed by a fellowship at Georgetown Medical University. After completing my education there, I practiced in the Washington area for about 6 years. And then my family and I made the move to Charlotte, where I continued to practice for an additional 10 years, leading up to my transition into surgical instrumentation sales.
So I guess the $1 million question is, as a provider, what inspired you to, I want to know, when did you even consider it? When as you're practicing, you're a provider, you have your own practice, right? You're doing your thing. When did you say, you know what, I'm curious about getting onto that side? Tell us that story. We have to.
I don't think it was as much of a motivation to get into surgical sales or get into medical sales. I think it came from the opposite direction where after being in practice for some time, I realized that there were some things that I was missing in my life, particularly with my family. I'm fortunate, I have a beautiful family, a wife and 3 children. And I think that the notion of being a medical practitioner, particularly for younger individuals, comes with it this certain level of nostalgia and prestige. And physicians for a long time have been held in that manner or that light. And as I continued to practice, I realized that all of this education and all of this training that I had been through was certainly meaningful and worthwhile. But on that note, I was missing my family grow, and particularly my children. And so I think that was the real onus behind why I decided to try to look at alternatives within the medical field that might give me some more flexibility to spend with my family and participate in life.
No, that makes a lot of sense. For those that are listening that might not know, can you give us a little bit about what type of schedule you did have as a provider that again led you down this road of wanting to look at different options?
So, immediately out of school, I came on board with a group that covered two different hospital systems in the Washington area, and on a daily basis, Monday through Friday, we were seeing patients in the office from 8 to 5, and then on top of that, we took call at, like I said, two different hospital systems, and so most days, I would start my day by trying to get into the hospital by 6 or 6:30 and round on patients in the morning, and then try to get to the office to look through my patient schedule for the day. During lunch, during some of those days, I was required to go back to the hospital to check on patients that were being admitted through the ER, also to do rounds on patients at the other hospital systems. And then after finishing patients, oftentimes I would go back to the hospital again to check on patients and or perform surgeries if that was required. So my days really extended from, roughly 6 in the morning till 6 or 7 at night. I was lucky to get home, by 8. And, with that being said, even therein, there were days where I wouldn't see my kids for 3 or 4 days in a row just because I wouldn't be home before they went to bed. And that's not to say that all my days are like that. I don't want to paint a dismal picture by any means, but um, that was not terribly uncommon.
Yeah, and you'd be pretty spent, I can imagine, putting in those hours and for doing it over so many years. So was it somewhat of a defining moment that you experienced that said, you know what, this has to stop. I need to look into doing something different, or had this been just kind of brewing for a number of years and somebody brought it to your attention that you could go that route? I mean, what really made the change?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was brought about by, you know, watching my family and, seeing the things that they were doing and realizing that I wasn't there. And then, my wife was very instrumental in helping me make that transition. Super supportive. She was my biggest advocate, and it was a tough transition, and I think you would be surprised at the number of providers that are interested in pursuing alternative careers in medicine outside of practicing. Just with my own journey, I
Yeah.
did a lot of research and found that there were tremendous numbers of support groups, tremendous number of outreach programs for providers. That could help them with these types of transitions. So I think it was a slow culmination of things that led me to that notion, and ultimately, led me to where I am today.
From wanting to make the jump to actually doing it, how much time passed?
So, as crazy as this sounds, I stopped work on March March 31st, and I started with my new career April 1st. So I left my office, and the following morning I was on a plane to my new job.
This is me. But I mean, you had been planning it for a little while.
Yes, that is true. That is true. It took me some time to find the right position, and honestly, it wasn't something that I said I'm going to stop practice and conversely go into medical sales. Rather, I'm going to stop practice. What are the availability or the options for me for a career path?
So you wanted to look for a new career path. You knew you were going to stop practicing, and then you
Yes.
decided, you know what can I do? knowing that
Exactly.
you wouldn't be working for a little while. I see. And then this is when the opportunity came about. Now, I guess what I really want to get to is, did somebody bring it to your attention? Did you think of a previous rep you experienced, or a sales manager you experienced and said, let me call him and talk to him about an idea I have? Or did you say, you know what, I'm going to explore becoming a sales rep?
Immediately upon deciding and making that mental transition and saying to myself, okay, I am literally going to stop practicing, because you can say a lot of things, but
Right.
until you do it, it doesn't really come into you know reality. So
Gets real. Yeah, it gets real. Yeah.
when I talked to my partners and said, guess what, this is what I'm doing, and it became real. And at that point, I said, okay, what, where am I going with this? And I actually had this as a notion. And I think being a practitioner for 16 years, I saw a lot of medical sales reps come and go through my office. And we can talk about this a little bit more, but I I always looked at the medical sales force as a benefit for me, in that they kept me sharp on the latest technologies, the latest pharmaceuticals. And I think that there are certainly some physicians who who don't see medical sales reps in this light, but I think the smart ones and the savvy ones do, in which case they take advantage of the knowledge that the medical sales reps are bringing to them. And so I consider the medical sales reps as part of my team. And granted, they were each a niche part of that team, but I held them in fairly high regard. And so when I decided to leave practice, I thought to myself, I can continue to use my knowledge and continue to use what I have learned, but use it on a different level or a different platform, where I'm not helping patients, but I'm trying to help providers perform better and to excel in what they're doing.
What did your colleagues say when you decided to make it real?
I mean, just what you would think. I mean, a lot of them, said, "Are you kidding me? You went to school, you practiced all these years, you did this training and residency and fellowship, and you're going to throw that out the window?" And I said, "No, I'm not throwing that out the window." I said, I look at life in general with this regard that all things that I've done in my life, both good and bad, were experiences who've made me who I am,
Yeah.
and I don't regret. Uh, I don't regret what I did. I really enjoyed practice. I really enjoyed treating patients, and I certainly miss that. Um, but I think with provider, my colleagues, they could not wrap their head around that, as why I would do that. So people said, "Well, are you taking time off? Are you going to go start up a different practice?" I mean, they couldn't believe that I was transitioning into a different role like that.
can only imagine. So you did it. You made it real. You're a sales rep now.
Yes.
Give us the first few months. Give it to us. What was the experience like? Tell us everything.
I mean, I think for me, and I don't want to sound pompous by any means, but
Sure.
for me, it was very humbling. And I always tell people, you have to check your ego at the door, because I went from walking into a surgical center or walking into a hospital, and as a physician, you're treated differently. You're treated differently from other people in those facilities. And so when I went in with this new hat, so to speak, and I said, "Hey, I'm a sales rep," I had to be comfortable with that fact, in that I could no longer have access to the facilities like I did, and I needed to be respectful of the administration and the staff. And not that I ever was not, but this was this was a very different role that I was playing. And so for the first couple of months, it was very eye opening and very humbling to be in this different role, not just with the facilities, but also with providers' offices. In which case, I was trying to gain access and talk to people that I once could easily do that with. Now I couldn't. And so there was definitely a learning curve.
Of course. So let me ask this. So you walked into accounts that you already had relationships with as a physician.
Yes, that is
And
correct.
that and so it didn't I would like to believe that it was advantageous to you. I mean, even though that you're a different role now, they still said, well, that's Dr. Picklesmeyer. That's him. So we can accept
Yes,
him, right?
that it is, but interestingly, and I kind of made this decision on my own. I
Okay.
don't I don't advertise that I was ever in practice and that was a provider. I don't advertise that to hospitals or surgical center administration. I don't advertise it to other providers. Um, New providers that I meet that I'm working with, I don't advertise it to them as well. And people say, why not? You should tell them that that's who you are. And
Right.
my thought is that I am a if somebody says, what do you do for a living? What is your job? I say I'm a medical sales rep for a surgical instrumentation company. That's what I tell them. Now, I was a practicing podiatrist, but that's not who I am now. That is not my role. And so I don't I don't hang my hat on that. I want people to appreciate me for my current role. And I think after speaking with people that they recognize that I do have a little bit more of a knowledge base and hopefully will be an asset to them. But again, I don't tell them that unless they inquire.
But some of these accounts already knew this, right? So
They
they
did.
recognize, this is Dr. Picklesimer. We know we got to let him in. This is who he is. No
Yes.
game. Get in here. Get in here. I'm
Yes.
assuming that had to work in your favor, right?
It does. It does. Yeah, it does. That does help me out in particular accounts, particular providers who I've known for years. So
Sure, sure.
it's definitely given me a leg up.
So, and that's, so when you're working with them in a case, in a
Uh,
surgery, for example, I'm assuming that even though you've presented yourself as a sales rep and you say, look, I'm here to help and be of assistance any way I can with this product, in this case, with this procedure, I would assume that they will still look at you as an advisor beyond a sales rep and as a clinician because of the relationship they already had with you. Does that still happen?
uh, yes, but and I don't think that is necessarily. I don't think that's necessarily particular only in my situation. And I tell my partners and colleagues that I interact with, I tell them when you're a provider and you're in the operating room and you're performing a procedure, it's just you. You're making all of the decisions, and you're taking the risks and the difficulties into play. It is very, very comforting to know that you have a medical sales rep in the room that is watching you closely and watching what you do and that is knowledgeable about what you're doing. And they don't have to be a provider or somebody that has, some tremendous history, with medicine. They just need to know their product and they need to know what they are there to help with or what they're selling. I again talk to my colleagues and I say, if you're a pilot flying a passenger plane, regardless of how many times you've done that, it's always nice to know that you got a co-pilot in the seat next to you in case something happens or something goes wrong. And again, the same thing holds true. If you're a provider performing a surgery, you want to know that somebody else is in the room that is watching you and is paying attention and it is there to help you and advise you. I think, in my particular situation, it is helpful with my past experience, but again, it's not something that I would say is necessarily particular just just for me.
Okay, so then I'd love to know what is particular just for you. Give us uh, if there are any, the stark differences between the traditional sales rep and a sales rep that comes from your level of experience. What have you noticed in how providers receive you? What have you noticed and seen that are stark differences? And that was part one with Dr. Picklesimer. Pretty interesting, right? It's not every day that you see someone that came from the practicing side to the sales representative side. And the level of expertise he brings, I mean, it's pretty profound. And I know that when his accounts see him, it must be quite the treat. So you might be listening to the episode and thinking to yourself, this is very interesting, and this is something I want to be closer to. And if you're someone that wants to get into the medical sales industry, maybe it's medical device like you heard today, or maybe it's pharmaceutical, or maybe it's biotechnology or something a little different, then make sure you visit evolveyoursuccess.com and follow the prompts. Fill out the application and have a conversation with someone that can really help you find where you should be and give you the exact steps to get there. We do our best to bring you episodes that are going to bring different insights to the industry, give you experiences of people that you might not be used to, and we do our best to bring this to you every single week. So again, make sure you tune in for another episode of the Medical Sales Podcast, and especially tune in for part 2 next week. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.